Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your host, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
And we're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. This is episode 222. 222. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, my friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, how's things going in your world this morning?
Man, it's lovely. It's lovely. We had that little squall line blow through last night, so I hope everybody in Texas made it through okay. I haven't heard of I heard some power outages near 20 minutes from where you and I live, but other than that, man, I think everything is good. So let's get into it. We've got two guests today. So first is Tim Congressman, who is the CEO of Jubilee Realty, who has been a former sponsor of this podcast and someone I work with on a regular basis. Tim, it's great to get you on, man. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So I know Josh, I sent Josh the report in a second, and you kind of blew his mind talking about how high you think natural gas is going to go this quarter. So let's kind of get into the press release and some of your thoughts about what's going on with natural gas.
Yeah, I'm reminded of I keep saying last summer, but it was 2 summers ago now. So summer of 2020, I was having dinner with another mineral CEO here in New York who's focused in the natural gas basins. And he said, Tim, if natural gas gets much lower, we're just going to have to slow it down and maybe hang it up for a while, because it was below $1.50. By the time you get the Henry Hub discount, you're below $1, right? And we've been acquiring natural gas assets in the Appalachians since 2008. It's been that way for a long time, right? Your stub is under $1. So you have that touch point. And then now we have $4, $5, almost $6 nat gas in this country. You have Europe above $30. You have spot over the past month in Asia above 60, spiking over 100. So if you would have told me 2 summers ago that natural gas anywhere in the world was going to be spiking over 100, I would have been super shocked, right? So that's where Mike, Alex, myself, we looked at everything going on, and I think Goldman Sachs might be, saying $6, $7. We're looking at all of the same data, I think, right, from the EIA, from all the same publicly available sources, and our nat gas prediction is $8 for Q4 of this year.
Josh, if we would have said Q4 this time last year, we'd probably gotten fired from our own podcast.
I'm telling you, man, it is.
Hear these numbers.
It is. I mean, with the winter coming, that seems reasonable at this point. $8, completely within reason. Man, could you imagine the Permian 2 years ago, $8 natural gas? I mean,
yeah, it's crazy. So what do you think, Tim, is the biggest contributing factor to why gas? Is it lack of Permian drilling, like we talk about on the show a lot? You obviously have a lot of experience with those East Coast basins, the confluence of perfect events. What's going on here?
Yeah, so I actually just reposted this morning on LinkedIn the interview that Alex Epstein did with Toby Rice, CEO of EQT, largest natural gas producer in the country. And, it's encourage everybody to watch it. It's maybe 40 some minutes long, but it's the restriction on infrastructure, the pipeline infrastructure. And who knows whether the current infrastructure package is actually going to do anything for natural gas specifically. But, they like to talk about hydrogen. Well, where does hydrogen come from? So it's interesting that, I'm viewing it as the natural gas industry isn't asking for, any handouts or any changes, or just let us build a couple pipelines so that Massachusetts can get natural gas from 250 miles away instead of 2,500 miles away. I mean, that's how ridiculous this is getting.
Yeah, man. Job about the Northeast. It's crazy to see what's going on there. Do you think, so you're in New York, Josh and I are in Texas right now. You're talking to people all over the country. Do you think these higher prices are helping people reconsider some of their thoughts on oil and gas, investing in oil and gas? Or because that's one of the things we hear a lot about is people don't want to put capital in oil and gas. So what are those conversations they're a little bit different for what you're doing from an operator, but still you're having conversations with people about putting money into the industry.
Yeah, so we're buying natural gas through our series of funds. We work with LPs to have more firepower. And what we're doing on the mineral side is, I think, just vastly different from the operators. The operators have a lot of inventory, which is great, but they're restricted by pipeline infrastructure. What we're able to do is helicopter ourselves in as an army of Tim, as an army of Alex, an army of one, and just get right in front of many times the drill bit to production, so that the natural gas that is being produced, that is being piped out, we're able to return that capital to our teams and our LPs, and that's really our strategy. So people hear oil and gas, and it's really oil and gas from an operated standpoint. It's totally different from minerals, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, just full disclosure, I know I've said it on here before, but for someone new, I'm an investor in Fund 1 and in Fund 2. Fund 2 hasn't closed yet. We'll get to that here in a second. But I remember getting my first deposit in Q1 of this year, right? So that would have been, many months ago when gas wasn't, $6 or $5.50 or whatever it is this morning. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay, here we go. This is good mailbox money. It's really weird because you could get focused on oil and gas, down, upset, kind of downtrodden, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then you get that mailbox money in, and it makes life a little bit better for that day. So, despite the negative headlines, there are ways to make money and continue. If the prices continue to go up, not only will the funds like you guys are doing are going to make money, but also there's going to be a lot more operators are drilling, because at some point the narrative just has to shift. Like, the average consumer can't afford these high prices. But we lose Tim there. I think we lost Tim.
Yeah, I think so.
Tim, you there, bud?
I'm back.
Oh, there you
are. I'm
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. I was just saying, I don't know if you heard my last comment, which is that as the prices go up, funds like yourself can make money, but also the operators at some point will be able to get capital investment on what they're doing, because the average consumer just cannot continue to handle these high prices. So it's weird, because we talk about inflation. Well, an investment like this is a hedge against inflation, but also the operators will have to drill. So it's really a great time to be investing in oil and gas, despite maybe some of the negative headlines.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking a more conservative approach where I'm willing to give up some upside in order to have cash flow in the near term. And so that may not be the right strategy for everybody, or they may not agree with that. But I've seen too many minerals companies with positions over the past 5 years. And when commodity prices are going in your favor, everything's great. And then as soon as it's not, then they're trying to exit a portion or all of their portfolio, maybe for less than what they bought it for, just to get into better acreage that's going to produce sooner. So, they sound like an obvious takeaway, but something that I've picked up on is, let's just be super disciplined, conservative, and we're able to do that because we're not trying to put, at this point, hundreds of millions of dollars to work every year. So, yeah, I mean, JP Morgan came out saying, quote unquote, their worst case scenario price prediction for the next 3 years, so through 2025, is $190 a barrel. Well, these operators, to your points, they can probably drill some wells well within their cash flows at $190 oil. So I think it's going to be a much different landscape again over the next 2 to 3 years.
So, Tim, one of the things I've been following is the talk of the energy crisis, kind of internationally. I believe China had like 60 coal mines that went off because of storming, landslides. It seems to be a shortage going on in a lot of countries, which is, I think, one of the reasons we're seeing these prices move up pretty quickly as well. I mean, how is that? How is the shortage that people are having? How is that affecting it? And will that make the gas price uptick short term, or do you see this being a long term? Like 2025, a long term thing?
It's a great question. I don't know what it looks like medium to long term, but I agree with a few others that have said it's going to last, beyond this winter, and this global shortage where we're talking about Europe and Asia is going to affect us here. And that's why, can we see it going to $8 within the next month or two here in the US? Yes. Why? Because it's supply and demand on a global stage. So I think it's super easy to get kind of caught up with, well, it was $1 and now it's $5 here in the US. But what about the spikes above $100 in Asia? Anybody paying attention to that? It might be important. It may not be a one for one, but it's we're all in this together.
Yeah. And so one of the things Josh and I have wondered about is, so you kind of have the Permian stuff, which we talked about, but going back to your experience on the kind of the eastern basins over there, is we've been surprised that the mainly dry gas basins haven't been able to capitalize on this. Like, if you just go back to, you talk about 2 summers ago, if we'd have said natural gas was at this prices, you would be like, oh my gosh, these guys are going to drill. You said it's going to last through this winter. Are you hearing rumblings that maybe we're going to see more drilling in some of those historical natural gas basins going into Q1 of 2022?
Can you repeat the last part? Sorry, I cut out for just a second.
Yeah. I was saying, do you think that we're going to see? Are you hearing any rumblings over there on the East Coast that maybe we will see these more dry basins get some more rig activity into the first half of 2022?
I haven't heard any of those rumblings, and I think it all comes back to pipeline infrastructure. If you don't have the pipes to haul it out of there, and even trucking it out, right, or railing it out, I mean, why would they drill more wells if there's no pipeline capacity? I mean, we could go through a litany of pipeline projects in the Northeast that have just been canceled. So that, on a high level, I think is kind of the reality of it.
Okay. A couple more questions here before we get you out. So just step back. Let's kind of talk about maybe what Jubilee is. We touched on it some, and then why you decided to kind of go this route, because some people might go, God, Tim, you're crazy. Like right now is the worst time to be investing in minerals. You've kind of touched on it some, but you kind of tease it out a little bit more, because your timing for Fund 1 and now Fund 2 as it wraps up is interesting for those who are hearing all the doom and gloom. And you seem to be opportunistic despite that.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? Well, probably 100 years ago. When's the next best time? Well, right now. I mean, again, we've been acquiring natural gas assets since 2008, and at certain points, people looked at us like, "Are you guys okay? Like, why are you guys buying natural gas minerals when you could be in West Texas, you could be in the Eagle Ford, you could be a lot of different places." And some of the larger shops that have bought $400, $500, $600 million worth of solely Appalachian natural gas assets, I'm sure their LPs at a certain point in time were going, "Are you guys? Is this the best idea?" So I think some of those guys are looking like they had some strategy at this point. And I think the misnomer is that minerals is, commodity price and what comes out of the ground, right? Additional permits, they're not going to drill 4, 8, 12 wells most of the time, all at the same time. So we're buying and then divesting of these assets through their development process, which gives us cash flow, and then we're able to exit. And the next guy, he's probably going to get another 4 wells drilled on the same property. So it's more nuanced than just the price that you see in the headline. It's more nuanced than just, well, this well is better than that well. So that's kind of how we see it.
Okay. And so we've talked about this Fund 2, your second fund that you're working on. It's getting ready to wrap up here in 14 days, something like that, 20 days. It's getting close. So who can invest, who can't invest? What kind of people are you looking for to invest in Fund 2?
Yeah, we work with high net worth individuals, family offices. So anyone that is an accredited investor, that's who we work with.
And I think you said if you call Tim or Alex and say you heard on the Text One Guys podcast, you're going to like double their investment money, right? Is that it's kind of something like that's what you're saying offline?
Exactly.
Okay, and so for folks who might be interested, accredited investors only, of course, we'll put some links to Jubilee to talk to. But how long? I know the Fund 2 is closing soon, so what kind of time is of the essence are we under?
Yeah, so we're accepting subscriptions daily through October 29th, and then we're going to get to work and go identify and purchase some assets. And we actually have already identified and have our first deal in title. So we're moving and grooving.
Now, I won't say anything other than, is that the deal you texted me about the other day?
Maybe.
I won't say anything else other than that. If that's the deal you're talking about, that was pretty cute. That was pretty sexy. Like I got kind of excited about that one. So good. Okay, Tim, thank you so much for coming on, for sponsoring the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, work with you. Where can folks best find you? LinkedIn, website? Where do you want to send them to?
Yeah, jubileeroyalty.com, and you can find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. You can just Google Jubilee Royalty and see some of the material that we have out there.
Okay. Also, be sure to look on YouTube for like Jubilee Markets, a weekly show, kind of going through different ways to invest, not just oil and gas, but general trading and investment strategies. So check that out as well. Thanks, Tim, for coming on. Talk to you soon, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, Josh. Well, I think our next guest will be on soon. We got a few minutes between now and then. So yeah, I mean, it's weird. We're sitting here talking about $8 natural gas in 2022 as a possibility. I mean, it's not like those. We've seen those articles before where people are like, here comes $100 oil, and you're like, oh, it's not coming to $100 oil. There's really no pathway for that. But the dynamics of the market have shifted so much in just the past. It's not even 12 months, really. It's mainly this year. So what, 9 months and some change. And so, yeah, I do wonder. I'm curious your thoughts. We talk about this, the general economic factors that are going on sometimes. How much longer do you think before the economy kind of gets right?
Well, so that's a part of the question. So just for a little bit of perspective on things, I'm sure you're aware of what's going on with Southwest, the airlines. I don't know all the details. I haven't read up on it enough. It piqued my attention because they canceled almost 2,000 flights. Like 30% of their flights were canceled. There's two factors. There's the question of supply and demand, which that the demand as it comes back, that was the one thing that we were wanting, was demand, because the government and shutdowns and lockdowns and COVID were all stifling demand. But now what we're having a problem with is a shortage of supply on the side of getting it where it needs to go. So usually if there's a high demand, there's a supply to meet it. But right now we're having a shortage of supply, not because of the inventory itself, but just the delivery and transport of this stuff. That's the question right now, is getting necessary workers, being able to get it from point A to point B. That's creating a supply issue, which is driving these prices pretty high as well. And I think it all goes back to the shutdown. When you begin to lock down, there's all sorts of ramifications that are going to happen that are going to upset and disrupt this supply chain. It's not as easy as turning it off and then turning it back on. And once these things are disrupted, the question is when is it going to start getting better? And I'll give you an example. Biden was talking about what was going on the West Coast with all these ships sitting out at sea, not being able to port. And 2 months ago, he addressing the issue. So it became a bad issue a couple of weeks ago, but 2 months ago when he was addressing the issue, he said that it was actually in the process of getting better. All the people that looked over all of the information and all these independent forecasters said, we're crossing the hill. It's about to start getting better. And it's been getting worse for 6 weeks straight. Like,
Yep.
They absolutely missed it.
Right. Okay. Let's circle back to that if we have time. I think our other guest is here, Congressman Arrington. Let's see here. I think he's in the green room there. Let's see if we can get him on here. All right. Can you hear us, sir?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. How's it going?
Well, it's always going better when you're in West Texas and not Washington, but I'm concerned about the country, and I'm sure your listeners are, and especially when you live in the largest energy basin in the world with respect to oil and gas. But, there's always hope, and I trust the American people's judgment, and I don't think they have a lot of confidence in what's going on, from the border to foreign policy to energy policy and this so-called economic recovery plan, which is going to put us back in the Stone Ages if it ever sees the light of day. But other than that, God bless West Texas, and good to be with y'all.
Well, it's good to have you on, and you covered a lot of stuff there. So let's kind of start with maybe the border and kind of your perspective of what is going on. And for those just tuning in, we have Congressman Jody Arrington from the 19th Congressional District of the great state of Texas. So it's good to have you on today, sir.
Great to be with y'all. And yeah, the border is probably the most, definitive self-inflicted crisis of the many of this administration, because as a border state, we're witnessing a deluge of people and drugs and crime flowing into this great state of ours in our country, and it is a direct cause and effect from this administration's open border policies. And the unfortunate thing about it is the American people should expect, no matter what party you're affiliated with, that their commander in chief would prioritize the security and safety of their citizens. They would respect our laws and sovereign border and faithfully execute those laws as they promised in their sacred oath. None of that's happening. So Texas is kind of just left hanging out there. I would submit to you, Ryan, that, and I say this often, there's a constitutional crisis because every state is guaranteed protection against an invasion. That's Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. And when there's an imminent threat and the federal government is failing to protect the state has the constitutional sovereign power to defend itself and its citizens. And so I think Texas is our only hope and way out of this for the foreseeable future. But it is horrible on so many levels, not the least of which are these poor souls that are being encouraged to come here and take a dangerous journey and risk the safety of their families on the way. So it's I'd say it's as bad as it as any of the policies, maybe saving except leaving Americans in Afghanistan during the withdrawal. We've never seen that in our lifetime.
Well, Congressman, one of the things that we've been paying attention to is the ban on drilling on federal lands, and just the overall impact that that's going to have, especially in areas of New Mexico, with the Permian Basin on that side. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the ban on the drilling on federal lands, and also kind of one of the ways that will impact these Texas-based operators that do work on the New Mexico side?
Well, it's another part of the unilateral executive actions taken by this president that will kill jobs, very good, high-paying jobs in rural America. And it also robs states like New Mexico of critical revenue to support their schools and other important state and local programs. And it just makes no sense, because if you take the public land moratorium, the XL pipeline cancellation, the new you know, climate alarmist EPA policies on carbon emissions that are connected to Paris, the Paris Climate Accord, you're talking about millions of jobs over the next 5 years. Right now, it's hundreds of thousands. It's going to squeeze every working family in the country with higher prices. We're already seeing that. So it's not just economic impact to West Texas and rural communities, and it's not just an impact to the state coffers and supporting infrastructure, education, and other important programs in New Mexico and other states. It is part of a big part of what's compromising our energy independence ultimately, and ceding that independence and really global leadership and economic dominance to China and Russia. And meanwhile, our president's, as he's doing all these things, assaulting the oil and gas industry, he's begging OPEC to produce more of that, as he would say, planet polluting petrochemical carbon emissions. So it really doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. But he can't. The one thing politicians can't take is inflation and the price at the pump, because it's a tax on everybody. And he's getting a big pushback, as are Democrats all over the country. And I hate it, but because of our borrowing and deficit financing of everything, no one feels any pain until we fall off the cliff. So this inflation is actually kind of a truth test for people. Do you want all this? It's going to cost trillions of dollars, and it's going to hurt us in the ways I just mentioned. And if you have to pay for it, inflation's one way we're paying for it right now. I think most people will reject this socialist utopian Green New disaster.
I know Josh has some questions about various tax things that we want to get to, but before
Yeah.
we talk about specifically on tax, and I asked Representative Kevin Brady this a few weeks ago, make the case for why an American taxpayer right now should be open to hearing anything about taxes when the federal government spins at will. And so it's a thing where you said, hey, we want to increase tax here or tax there. I don't care who you want to tax. If the federal government is going to print money at will, how can we ever be convinced as voters that we should be paying more taxes? We should be paying less if the government's going to print will. So let's start there, and then we'll get into specific tax policies.
Well, this is an area where the federal government, among other areas, does not operate the way the American people do at all levels: individual, family, business, even local and state governments. We don't live within our means. That's why we're almost 30 trillion in debt and climbing, or I should say digging, because it's a hole that we're digging for our generation. I'm not 50 yet, so I think I'll see the disastrous effects of our deficit financing and our national debt in my lifetime. My 3 children certainly will. So you're right. It's hypocritical. We had $1 trillion deficit before COVID, which was the highest annual deficit we've ever run. That means that we are spending and growing the government at $1 trillion over what we bring in revenue. It's completely unsustainable. So, yeah, I think the American people should be outraged that they want more of our hard-earned money to pay for things that they're not willing to, to pay for in a way that is responsible and balances our budget. And they want more. They want $3.5 trillion of taxes, even though we're already, we're not the most competitive in terms of tax rates. We got lower when we cut taxes 3 years ago. We grew jobs. We took 6 million people out of poverty. We had the highest, median family income increase on record, 50-year unemployment low, which was a record. But nevertheless, we're not going to go back if Biden and the Democrats pass this tax and spend bill to having the highest tax rate in the free and developed world, higher than communist China, which doesn't seem like an America first, America best policy. So, and all for what? For expanding the welfare state to a point that you won't even recognize it. It would make LBJ and FDR blush with the new cash entitlement programs, like paying people cash money every month per child, regardless of whether they're working or looking for a job when they are work capable. That's $500 billion as a temporary policy. We know it'll be made permanent, so it'll be $1 trillion plus. Guys, we can't even pay for our social safety nets for seniors like Social Security and Medicare. Those are basically insolvent, one in 4 years, one in less than 10 years. So, man, this ship is sinking fast. And I think while China is the biggest existential threat, in my opinion, and we certainly have challenges and even crises like the border, the debt and the prospect of a debt crisis that's looming large over the horizon is in my opinion the very thing that will take America off that king of the mountain, and we won't be the exceptional country, and China will be the global leader, which has all kinds of implications. So, but they do want to take the tax code and further assault oil and gas, in addition to these unilateral decisions we've been talking about. And it's written all throughout their tax proposal. It is just one hostile, targeted, punitive measure against oil and gas after another. I'm grateful that, at least at this point, they don't have intangible drilling cost and percentage depletion allowance. Those are huge general business deductions that every other business and industry gets. But that was in Biden's proposal to basically take those from oil and gas. It would have destroyed the independent guys. It would have destroyed the economic landscape of West Texas and rural America, and oil and gas, because 90% of the production in our country comes from the mom and pop, independent, small, and even medium developed oil and gas production companies.
Well, we talked a little bit about some of these tax codes. There was the Superfund Tax. There's the current bill that they're discussing right now, and then also the Green New Deal. There's been a lot of what we call ESG, where all these companies are pushing for carbon tax, all sorts of things that are intended to, I guess, protect the environment, to really push as many investors toward the renewables as possible, trying to incentivize moving away from fossil fuels toward these renewables. What do you see in these taxes, the Superfund tax and other things that are potentially going to impact the industry?
Well, the layer upon layer of taxes on the oil and gas industry, and the Superfund is directed at the petrochemical sort of refiner manufacturer side downstream. By the way, 90% of the products that we use every day have some carbon basis, some petrochemical component part, including the phone I'm using and the equipment you're using and the cars we drive, the rubber on our tires, the cement in our infrastructure. So all of these things will be passed on to the consumer, to our working families, in higher prices of goods, and not just at the pump, but in every good. And we're already seeing inflation on just about every product in the marketplace today. I think it's $175 on average that the American family is spending every month, more than they did last year. So it's just bad economic policy, but it will, like you said, you'll see capital start to go to the intermittent, more costly, renewable side of the equation, which I'm for all the above. And if we need to accelerate technology in battery storage and different things to move the renewables along, I don't think anybody has a problem with it if there is a phasing out and a standing up of these different sectors where they can be economically sustainable. But they're not reliable today. They're not economically sustainable. And, we'll wake up like Europe and be in a place where Europe depends so much on renewable. And they've had a really tough time because the renewables aren't producing what they projected and what they need. And so now their natural gas prices are 500% more. So it's not a good plan. Having a natural transition to renewable, hey, if it can work, I think it's good for the country. Energy independence is good, and having diversity of energy sources is good. And I've embraced that, since I've been to Congress. But this administration and the climate alarmists who are in the Democrat Party and part of the left, the radical left that's driving the agenda, that this is religion to them, and they want to destroy oil and gas. Even if we are leading in oil and gas, carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, nobody does a better job of producing these resources in an environmentally friendly way, in a safe way. The United States leads in that. And with carbon capture technology, we may get to net zero carbon emissions in the next decade or two, but that won't be enough. They just hate oil and gas, and they're not concerned or interested in the facts or science. It's ideological, so it's hard to have a debate. Let's just take real quick the combustible engine. If you took every gas powered car off the highway and byways of America and gave us all electric vehicles, and then deducted the emissions it would take when you plug those in, and you deducted what you need to fly because you can't fly on solar panels, then you have less than 1% of a net reduction in carbon globally. So we're going to spend trillions of dollars to electrify our country, and we're going to break the bank and the back of our country and put all these costs on working people for what? This is why China's building more fossil related energy supply and utilities. And we're seeing it in Russia too. They're capitalizing on it. And I think they're just, frothing at the mouth over the opportunities of global dominance because we're acting so irrationally in the United States on account of ideology.
Okay, we'll get you out of here with this question. Josh and I have pointed this out on numerous occasions, whether it's oil and gas or big tech or whomever, and that is the idea that whatever they say, the big boys, whatever they say, we just about go against what they say because their policies. Facebook wants to raise the standard and work with Congress. Of course they do, because it makes it harder and the barrier of entry higher. Pioneers always out there talking about raising the barrier of entry. So we appreciate you coming on this podcast because you are talking to the average citizen. Josh and I are just a couple average guys. So we really appreciate that. But the question is, how does Congress separate itself from being influenced by bringing in the biggest names whether it's oil and gas, whether it's tech, and hearing from what those people have to say, because those people do not have, by and large, the best interests of average Americans, and they usually get the predominant voice in Congress. So how do you tackle that problem?
That's a great question, Ryan and Josh. Those are all good questions. There's so much here, and I'm sorry to ramble on so long, but it's just there's a lot in the ball of yarn here to unravel for your listeners. But on that question, the big guys, right? You got big insurance, big pharma, big tech, big oil. I mean, they've got tremendous influence and power. And look, I'm not anti any of the big guys at multinational. But I am pro competition. The free enterprise system works when consumers have choices and when they have businesses competing for them. And that's what drives value. It drives quality and it reduces cost. And that's why we have the best economy, and that's why our consumers have the best value proposition than any country. But you have this monopoly, these monopoly forces, in all the above that I mentioned, and it distorts the market, and it gives us as consumers less control and less choice. And Congress has to break those things up, in my opinion. I mean, we have it in the food supply too with the meat packers. There are only three companies, big ones. China owns one, Brazil owns another, and then you've got the U.S. having one. That is a real threat to our national security. You're talking about the food supply. Now you're talking about information flow. That's critical to our democracy to have more choices, options, and competition. And with respect to oil and gas, I mean, the little guys are the ones that are the innovators. We wouldn't have the shale revolution if you didn't have the independent producers. And by the way, small businesses in general are the ones that are the job creators, not the big companies. So when you got a lot of you've got both sides saying they care about the small guy, the little guy, the small business, etc. I don't see it. Even in this tax proposal, just be clear, the marginal rates are going to go up. That affects the pass-through, basically small businesses. The deduction that we gave small businesses, that's going to be cut. There's an Obama surtax on the small businesses. And C Corps, 1.4 of the 1.7 million corporations in this country are small businesses. So don't think for a minute that this is a tax on the rich or a tax on Wall Street or a tax on the big multinational company. This is a tax on the middle income, middle working class people who are going to pay more. And it's going to be small businesses who are going to be taxed out of being competitive with the big guys because they can't afford the regulations and taxes based on scale that the big guys can. So you're right. This is a way to flush out some of the small guys and give greater market share to the big guys. And in every way, every time you have these distortive effects because of monopoly forces, the government has to prevent that. That's as bad as big government. Big business and big government, they are relatives, close relatives, and the effects and impact on our citizens are similar, and they're sinister forces that hurt us if our government just allows them to continue to concentrate more power. And I think this tax and spend deal is going to accelerate that concentration of power on the big tech. Until Republicans get in power, I don't see anything happening. But Republicans were in power and we didn't do anything when we'd had it. So let's be clear and honest with your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, good questions, guys.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And as we said, to preface that question this is speaking to the average person. This isn't Fox News, which you get the average listener on Fox News, but the podcast format is different, has a different feel. We always appreciate when the elected officials come on. So thank you for that. We look forward to following what's going on, having you on again in the future. Thank you to Christian for setting this up. I believe is who got this done. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Josh. I love what y'all are doing. Keep getting the message out to, like you said, to to our average citizens who feel like their country is leaving them behind. And I agree with it. As a Plainview, Texas Bulldog, as a small town kid, I agree with it. God bless y'all. Thanks for your time.
Thank
And
you, sir.
where can people follow your work, Congressman?
Just look us up, jodyarrington.com, and you'll get all kinds of resources on our official side and on the campaign side. So we'd love for you to follow us, and we've got a newsletter too. You can just click and sign up for that, and we give you a weekly and bi-weekly updates on what's going on in Washington.
Okay, thank you so much, Congressman. We'll link to that in the show notes and look to get you on again in the future.
Thank y'all. Take
Thank you.
care.
All right, that is Congressman Jody Arrington. Mr. Shelton, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I got one thing.
I'm
ExxonMobil
guess.
building, huh?
I'm about the guest. Anybody thought about the guest?
No.
No thoughts about the guest?
No thoughts. Yeah, I'm glad he came on. I mean, it's always insightful to hear these guys that are, dealing with the politics on a day in day out basis. So I do appreciate the insights because that's something we don't get a lot.
Yeah, and let me just say this real quick. So first off, thanks for his staff for Josh. I'm gonna mute you. Your mic's rubbing your thing there. He thanks for coming on. But folks, getting guests like this is a big honor for Josh and I, of course. So please share it, like it, 5-star review it. Even if you don't like the congressman or you love the congressman, we don't care. Drop a 5-star review. That helps get those type of folks on this show continually in the future. So let them know that you appreciate them coming on, at least if nothing else, because they come on with unscripted questions and we try to ask things of interest. And I think, Josh, the thing that the citizens, talk about the tax plan, and for me, it's kind of a catch-22. It's like, okay, well, the Democrats want to do this tax plan. It's like, right, but if you guys are going to continue to print at will, then taxes shouldn't even be. I don't want to talk about increases in anybody taxes, much less oil and gas, because you're going to print the money that you need at will to continue. So why are you taxing people? And to frame the conversation as what it is, which is control, right? It's not about increasing the taxes to balance the budget. That's not what's going on here. I don't care right, left, independent, who says that. That is not what's at play here. What's at play here is control, right? And so, we have to be reminded of that. That's the non-political take there. That's just an easy observation that you want to make. So, all right, Josh. I guess we'll get out of here. We're up against the clock. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. Drop a 5-star review. We appreciate it. Hadn't asked for one in a while. And until next time, keep climbing.